Hello, welcome. I'm Mike May, and welcome to Conversations. And tonight we have with us Glenn Weiser, and I just learned how to pronounce that correctly. Did I pronounce it correctly?
That's right, just like Budweiser beer.
Just like Budweiser beer, okay. Now, a few months ago I was at the Ellington Farmers Market, and I heard somebody singing, and I went over, and there you were. So how did you wind up, tell us your life story. How did you wind up singing blues and country and roots music at the Ellington Farmers Market?
Well, the short story was that somebody canceled, and then they called me back, and they needed somebody to fill in. So I showed up, and I did the gig. In the age of COVID, these are great gigs to have, you know, because you're outdoors. You're not going to get anything, and you get to do sort of whatever you want, which, as it turned out, they liked a lot. But the longer story is that all through high school, I originally studied classical guitar.
Classical.
I started playing guitar when I was about 13, and then I took up classical guitar because I grew up Methodist, and the Methodists played a lot of Bach in church.
Oh, okay.
And so I wanted to learn how to play Bach on the guitar. And from there, I sort of moved over into folk fingerpicking and more American root styles, blues. And I was an instrumentalist for a long time. And then in order to be able to get more different kinds of work in the music field, I started singing, took a couple of voice lessons, and learned how to get more out of my voice.
A whole couple of voice lessons, yeah.
Well, I took actually about 15 months of voice lessons.
Oh, okay.
And then I got it to the point where it was okay. I wouldn't say that you heard anything like Caruso at the farmers market, but it was certainly good enough for them.
Now, where did you grow? You said when you were 13. So where did you grow up?
I grew up in Bergen County, New Jersey.
Oh, New Jersey. That's right. Okay.
Right in the northeast corner of the state.
Okay.
In a town called Glen Rock.
Okay.
And at that time in the 60s, it was a pretty good high school. Glen Rock High was at one time one of the top 10 U.S. high schools.
Oh.
And from there, I went to New York State and got into the music instruction business and taught in a lot of music stores, learned how to play banjo, mandolin, harmonica, electric bass, fiddle, ukulele, and started teaching on several instruments, and then played locally, made my living that way. And that worked out pretty well for a long time.
But now, you said you spent time in Tennessee.
Right. What happened was...
Yeah, I would just say, okay.
That my wife was coming up through the insurance industry, and she was a director at GHI in New York City. And in that world, usually if you're going to get to be a vice president, you've got to do a long-distance move. So we got a job offer in Portland, Maine. I went up to, it's a beautiful place. I absolutely loved it up there. Yeah, I've been there, yeah. Got a job in a music store. From there, we went to Tennessee. And then from Tennessee, we came back here to Connecticut, where she was working for Magellan Health. And we stayed here. Well,
now, this is where I may be stereotyping, because I heard the music and I heard what you were singing, and then you mentioned Tennessee, so I had just gotten the impression that you spent most. How long did you live in Tennessee?
Actually, we were there for only about 15 months.
Okay.
However, I really liked it. I mean, you know, I play bluegrass music.
Yeah.
You know, the harmonica. The harmonica is, you know, historically a very popular instrument in Tennessee. And I could play country style, sort of like Charlie McCoy, and they really liked it. You know, I played their music, and even though I was a Yankee, they sort of begrudgingly accepted me.
All right, so that worked out.
And they never let you forget the fact that you're not from there.
Yeah, well, that would be just from the way we talk, or the way you talk, or the way we talk, we kind of had.
Well, yeah, I
stick
mean,
out.
it's obvious, but you know, and it's okay. A lot of those people were fine people, and I have a lot of good memories, and also the scenery, the mountains and the Smokies. That's all great to look at.
Now, I've heard that I've been across the country a few times, but I've never been through like Kentucky or Tennessee. Wherever I went, I've always wanted to get there. And I had a friend who lived in Louisville for a long time, and I just never got there. So and he's moved since then. So that's something I've regretted. Now, you not only teach music, you have quite a pile of books here.
Right.
So what is these? Tell us about this.
Well, let's see. I'm the author of several books, and I just brought them in a non-chronologically arranged stack. This one, for example, is about Irish harp music arranged for solo guitar, Celtic harp music of Carolyn and others. And Turlough O'Carolan was the last of the great harper composers in Ireland. He lived during the Baroque era from 1670 to 1738. And he would travel around the Irish countryside, and he would stay in the houses, the mansions of the Irish gentry, and be hosted. And
So he's like a bard.
well, he was actually, yes, it would be part of the bardic tradition. And he would play, but while he was there, he would hear orchestras playing Italian Baroque music, the music of Corelli, Geminiani, you know, maybe Vivaldi, and he sought to emulate that sort of music on the Celtic harp, which is a diatonic instrument, meaning just like the white keys of the piano without the black keys.
Oh.
And he was able to approximate classical music to a certain extent, but he was blind and he was never able to
So he
study.
really was a bard.
Well, it was
blind bard.
even in America. I mean, it was a traditional occupation, you know, that blind people took up, like Ray Charles.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
you know, a lot of the Southern blues guitar players,
Yeah.
blind Lemon Jefferson.
Right,
So
yeah.
it was sort of one way you could make a living if you were blind. One of the few ways, probably. And so he traveled around, and he composed a lot of things that you know, were handed down after the harp sort of died out in Ireland around 1800. And these tunes have been very popular ever since in the world of traditional Celtic music. So I arranged a lot of them for guitar and published them in a book.
Okay, so this is Celtic
That's Celtic harp
music,
of O'Carolan for solo
and it's a
guitar.
blues and rock
Harmonica, yep.
Okay.
Now
folk-
this is, so some of these books are, you know, they're similarly themed. This, folk songs for solo guitar.
We'll get it later.
Oh, oop, that fell out. What is that? Oh yeah,
That
that's
says
the CD that goes with the book.
Oh.
And then the Celtic Guitar Encyclopedia, more of this sort of thing.
Now you seem, keep
Yeah,
going. I'm
go.
sorry.
Question?
Well, you seem to have an interest in Celtic music.
Well, yes. My mother was born in County Down in Ireland. My grandfather was from Armagh, and he was born, you know, before the partition of Ireland. So he was Irish, and they left in the 1920s. There was after the partition of Ireland, there was a great deal of fighting and, you know, sort of sectarian violence in Ireland, and it sort of got to be too much for my grandfather.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
And decided that he'd be better off making his way in America, so he brought his family to America. He was trained as a nurseryman, and he got a job working on the estate of a wealthy guy, and did quite well. Actually was employed steadily through the Depression, which was a big problem for a lot of people in that generation, and did pretty well.
Now, is he musical?
You know, he was. He met my grandmother when he was employed as the organist of Methodist Church in a place called Lisburn, I think. And
Lisburn, what state?
Lisburn is in County Down.
So this is back in Ireland.
Yeah, back in
okay,
Ireland.
Still back in Ireland.
And now that you got me for an interview here, I'll tell you a very interesting family story.
All right.
Which is, my grandmother grew up in a town called Putney in England. This is where Jeff Beck came from, the rock guitarist.
Really?
You know,
Did you know him?
And where they have a rowing contest between Cambridge and Harvard every year on the Thames River. So when she was 18, she went to see a gypsy fortune teller with a friend of hers in the heart of London.
Oh, great.
And the gypsy fortune teller told my grandmother that you will take a short trip across the water, and then you'll take a long trip across the water, and you won't come back. So as it unfolded, she met my grandfather, who was from Northern Ireland, right? And while he was, oh, actually, I got that detail wrong. This was in London. And one day he walked down the street in Putney, and she looked out the window, and she called her mother over, and she said, "Mother, you see that man there?" And I said, "Yes." "Mother, that's the man I'm going to marry." And then he was the organist in the church. This was in England, not in Lisburn. They got married.
Now, how did they meet?
Well, because she showed up in church and he was the organist.
Oh, so she stalked him.
And she said, "Oh, that's him. He's the organist in my church." So she started chasing him around, and he's thinking, "Who is this crazy woman?" And they went, but he was, because he had a draft deferment, he had an exemption from military service. The English government didn't think so. So they tried to draft him, and he was non-compliant with that, and they arrested him, and they tried him, and he was acquitted, and they'd had enough of England, and then he went back to Northern Ireland with his English bride. So that was the short trip across the water.
Okay.
Then, after the fighting in Northern Ireland got to be too much, they went to America, and that was the long trip across the water. And then they didn't come back until they were quite old. So the prophecy of the gypsy turned out to be true.
Okay, and now you're here.
And otherwise, I would have been born in Northern Ireland, grown up in the early 70s, and a rather bad time to be there.
Well, that worked out. Okay, what we're going to do, we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back for more of this story. Okay, thank you. Okay, welcome back to Conversations. I'm Mike May, and we're here with Glenn Weiser, who has just told us how his family got together. But now, okay, this is all Irish, and your last name's Weiser.
Right. Well, my great-grandfather.
Oh, that's right, the great-grandfather.
Was a Prussian immigrant, and then his son married my grandmother, who was Scottish. So, you know, leaving me still probably with more Scottish DNA than any other type.
Okay, so that's right. This is going back a few more generations.
Yeah.
Okay. So you got, okay, the Celtic Guitar Encyclopedia, and then, folks, so now.
I know. So coming to another whole idea, we have a couple of books on how to play old-time fiddle tunes on the harmonica. And this first one was the first book on that subject.
So again, it's Irish again. Okay.
Well, Irish and American, but there's a lot of American tunes. You know, the things like "Turkey in the Straw" or "The Arkansas Traveler." They're all in there. And the other one is more like American tunes. And these are things that had been done really for quite a while, for probably since shortly after the Civil War. You know, people had been playing these kinds of tunes on the harmonica. It's just that nobody had ever written a book about it. So I was really sort of documenting a long-standing folk music tradition, and that was this one was the first book that I ever published out of the 11 that I have in print now. You can find them all on Amazon.com if you just type in my name.
And and that's fine.
So,
So this is a little bit like the WPA project. And the 20s, they'd send people around to record the old folk music up in the hills and to
right. Alan Lomax and John
down.
Lomax were people who were involved with that sort of thing in the Library of Congress. You know that he was the guy who really spearheaded that sort of stuff, I would say. And well, earlier there was Cecil Sharp, who went through the Appalachians and collecting English folk songs that had been preserved there among the people.
So now, do you have a favorite type of music you like to play or sing, or?
Well, that's hard to say. I play a lot of Celtic music, but I also play bluegrass. I get together, Wednesday night once in a while with a group of people here in Connecticut and Burlington or Bloomfield, and I play bluegrass. I like that kind of music a lot. That's a lot different. I play.
So now, what's different about bluegrass?
Well, bluegrass is a music that was sort of invented by Bill Monroe in the 1940s, and what Bill Monroe did is he took elements of gospel music, took elements of old-time fiddle music, took elements out of the English ballad tradition, elements of Western swing, and he combined them all into an acoustic type of country music that he called bluegrass because he was from Kentucky.
Okay.
And his band was therefore known as the Bluegrass Boys. And it's the only genre of music that can be credited to the invention of one single individual. No other genre of music is that true of, but it is true of bluegrass.
Well, I've always liked bluegrass music, and someone pointed out, and I never realized that there's no drums in bluegrass.
There's no drums. No, that's right. No.
So that's something unique about. Did he do that deliberately, or it just wasn't that what he was drawing from? They didn't use drums.
Well, drums
not really.
Wasn't really part of that. That wasn't really even part of country music in the early decades of country music. Drums really was something that came to us, via jazz.
Okay.
Where drum sets were used in New Orleans jazz, and then
that would make.
And then got absorbed into rock and roll, But
the string band tradition.
Yeah, it was really. Bluegrass was really a descendant of the string band tradition. Where you typically have like banjo, fiddle, and guitar, and vocals. And I also, in terms of genres of music, I like blues a lot. When I was 15, I got a record by Lightnin' Hopkins, who was a country blues player who actually played that type of guitar right there that you see here. Is a Guild J50. Played that type of guitar, and he would keep a bass line going with his thumb, and then with his fingers he would play melodic figures, and just played great stuff. And so I learned how to play that kind of music as I was learning classical guitar, because it all involved using your fingers instead of using a pick.
Yeah, that's something that I started to try to do, and I started to try to learn to play guitar, a little bit of both, but I've just been playing the same 8 chords for the past 40 years, and I keep saying I've got to take some lessons.
Well, they say Elvis only played 5 chords, and he did pretty good with that.
Yeah, he only lived to be 42, so. Now you mentioned, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, you mentioned you play the fiddle a little bit, but that's different.
Fiddle is different from violin, right?
Okay, well, how's the fiddle different from the violin? They're both the same thing.
It's the style of playing. It's the same instrument. People often think that a fiddle is different from a violin. A violin is played in classical music style, and a fiddle is played very often by self-taught players. you know, and a different repertoire. Obviously, the fiddle is the kind of music that's used for square dancing in America and step dancing in Ireland, you know. So there's tends to be a lot of fast jigs, reels, hornpipes, things like that. Although there are some slow airs, things like that.
Okay, so now let's see, we've got fiddle tunes. What else do we have here? We've got harmonica. All right.
Oh, cowboy songs. All right, so this was done on the request of one of my publishers. I was not going to write this book, but he said, would you do a book for me? I'd like something like this in my catalog. And I said yes. And sort of the interesting story about this book is that I was reading a lot about you know, cowboy music on the harmonica, and a lot of people were saying that the cowboys didn't actually play the harmonica out on the trail, that was just a Hollywood invention. So what I set out to do, I mean, in addition to, you know, collecting these songs and the lyrics, and these are all authentic cowboy songs that were sung on the trail in the 19th century, the great era of the cattle drives, which started in 1866 and went up to about 1890 or so. I then decided I was going to figure out what the truth of that was, or try to research that, and so I contacted the state historians of every state where the cattle drives had gone through, and also the curators of the 3 cowboy museums that exist in the United States. And I tried to find out what that was, what had actually happened. And one of them provided me with a scan of a page of a newspaper, the Rocky Mountain News, from about 1883. And the article was, "What is the cowboy doing today?" And they're talking about the daily life of the cowboy. And they said, after the horses are staked down for the night, because the thing about cattle drives is that you could only move them about 10 to 15 miles a day, because if they walked too much, they would lose weight. They would be less valuable when they came to the railheads where they would be shipped off to the slaughterhouses. So they would drive them, and then when they got as far as they could go, then they would stake down the horses, and, you know, they would round up the cattle. And according to this article, the cowboys would play the harmonica, and the reporter says that the cowboys were quite skilled on the instrument too. Obviously, they had a lot of time. And they also, you know, because there they were out in the middle of nowhere, they had to amuse themselves, so they also recited a lot of poetry. There's a great tradition of cowboy poetry. And there was also, if someone played the fiddle, they'd have square dances among themselves too.
Well, that would make sense. Something small and portable, and you do have a huge amount of time on your hands, and so to be able to. Yeah,
they would play. The fiddle was the most commonly played instrument, and after that the banjo, but the harmonica was definitely played.
Well, this is Betsy from Pike, Billy the Kid, Bury Me on the Lone Prairie, the Cowboys' Christmas Ball.
Yeah, that's a hilarious song.
Okay, Goodbye Old Paint, Get Along Little Doggies, Utah Carol, and then extra lyrics. Okay, so that would that would be interesting. You know, we could do a show of cowboy songs. Now that would be interesting. That would be a theme, something a little.
Yeah, well, I've got a Stetson. You know, we could make it happen.
We don't want to go too far.
And then there's a whole other sort of a book, Masters of the Blues Harp. This is a book of transcriptions of famous blues harp solos. And again, this was something that, it was not a book that I thought of, but I was approached to do it. And so that's how that book came about. And there's some solos by some of the greatest blues harp masters, Little Walter Jacobs, Sonny Boy Williamson.
Now, is there something that makes a blues harp a blues solo, or?
Well, you're playing in the blues idiom, and typically you're not playing the harmonica in the key stamped on the harmonica Because if you take a harmonica here and you play it in the major key, you get, you know, folk songs. And then if you use the draw notes, then you can bend the notes and you can create train effects. Some people theorize that blues harmonica grew out of train imitations.
Oh, okay.
Which were done, you know, well back into the 19th.
Well, give us a sample.
The 19th century. Well,
All right,
That's
okay.
12 bars of blues harmonica. All right, and then another one, favorite 19th century American songs for fingerstyle guitar. This book was basically the music, really like the Civil War songs, the songs coming from the minstrel show tradition, a lot of Stephen Foster songs, and Afro-American spirituals, things like that. And then at the end of the book, some of the beginning of Tin Pan Alley tunes. That would be like the band played on and the sidewalks of New York. The Tin Pan Alley era sort of started around 1890, so that's the tail end of the 19th century. And these are some of my favorite things to play on the guitar.
Okay. Well, this has been, we're winding up now, so we've gone through quite a bit of American history, all the way from going to Ireland. Now we're up to the 19th century, and then Tin Pan Alley. So. And
then that's, if I just have a. And then, speaking of Tin Pan Alley, these are Tin Pan Alley tunes for fingerstyle guitar. There's things like the Charleston, Pretty Baby, that sort of thing.
Well, we'll have to have you back sometime and maybe do a little bit more of this.
Okay.
So, Glenn Weiser, I got it right. Thank you for coming, and thank you for joining us, and we'll hope to see you again sometime.
And could I just say one last thing?
Okay.
I do teach lessons on guitar, banjo, mandolin, fiddle, electric bass, and you can, after the show, you can go to my website, www.celticguitarmusic.com.
Sounds good. Okay, thank you. So thanks for joining us, and good night.